Yep. So we also tackled liquor liability.
Tackled.
So this was your bill, right?
I was the only member of Judiciary that did not vote for this. It started off with them creating a fund, which we started calling Obamacare for bars.
Yep.
And then that fund got taken away. This bill has been rewritten 2-3 what the heck is going on out there? But yeah, I mean, and whenever it came to it, Russell Ott was speaking against it. You had the attorneys start tearing him up about not being an attorney. Myself, Jay Kilmartin, Kathy Landing, we all kind of stood up and defended because we're not attorneys, but we've got experience with some of this. And still, whenever it pulled down to it, I voted against it because you're trying to solve a problem that government created with more government.
Yeah, this one, I didn't like it. When this thing was being just hashed out in the Liquor Liability Ad Hoc Committee. Again, I understand the economics of it all. There's now 3 companies for every $1 of premium. It's costed them $2.77 in settling or dealing with these jury verdicts. So it's non-economical. But, here's my thing. Prior to 2017, there wasn't legislation that said these bars had to have at a minimum $1 million in coverage.
And prior to then.
Hold on.
Okay.
So let's just guess. If there's 1,000 bars all now mandated to have $1 million of coverage, do the math. There's a lot of insurance money now there, right? We created a market through legislation for now, instead of having a pot of insurance money, the size of South Carolina, you now have mandated through legislation. That bucket just got 1 million times bigger. So the pot at the end of the rainbow for attorneys who sue victims or folks who are involved with alcohol-related accidents and so on and so forth, which includes the bars and restaurants that serve the alcohol.
2/3 of our delegation, or the House and the Senate, is attorneys. 2/3. And they don't all do the same thing. So just because you're an attorney doesn't mean you're a bad person. And as someone who is suing a company for liability, I agree that attorneys are needed. However, it makes it hard if you're not an attorney to trust the intent of the legislation.
I would say if you're an attorney, it's your duty, it's your job to bring justice, whether it's through civil penalties or criminal penalties for your client.
But the only
the attorneys aren't the bad people or the bad actors for the most part.
And the insurance companies are loaded.
The issue is we created this through legislation. And again, the good intent was victims needed to be compensated.
Correct.
Right? But now this pendulum's swinging back and you're like, damn it, we didn't intend for this insurance market to get so expensive to where it's driving out of business our bars and restaurants.
So
that wasn't the intent.
Right.
So this legislation now says you still have to have the $1 million minimum, right? But if you stop selling liquor at 10 p.m., is it?
There's different levels.
Right. So it's a progressive.
VFWs are considered different.
Okay, it's a progressive incentive.
Right.
So if you stop, but I can't remember if it was alcohol or just liquor. But if you are a bar or a restaurant and you stop serving alcohol at 10 p.m., your insurance,
you only got to carry coverage, $750,000.
Oh, is that what it was? 750.
Well, and it's like if it's at 5,
I thought it was
if it's at 5 p.m. it's like $500,000.
Correct. It's $100,000
as the time goes.
Yep. So your umbrella, your coverage, you have to have $1 million coverage. If you stop selling at 10, you get $100,000 off. So now you only got to hold a $900,000.
So now you just want a bunch of drunk people on the road during hours that everyone's on the road.
So if you stop serving at 9, guess what? You save another $100,000.
Right.
8, Now you're 300. So now you only hold a 700,000, and all the way down to 5, to where if you stop serving alcohol at 5 p.m., you now only have to hold a $500,000 alcohol
But
policy.
we had this discussion, and what were we told? The difference between $500,000 and $1 million minimum liability, it was not going to change much at all. And the companies
so if it's
don't want
not
to be
going to change that much at all,
this is blowing air up your skirt to make you feel like I'm doing something.
so
Like, it is ridiculous.
And again, and I went back to some of the members of this ad hoc committee, and I said, hey, folks, again, back in 2017, when we mandated bars and restaurants have to have $1 million worth of coverage, we now have this result that none of us like. Bars,
Right.
restaurants, none of us like it. So
The attorneys do.
maybe. So why don't we just go ahead and take that down to 500,000? Let's just take that number down. And here was my rationale. If you listen to some of the early ad hoc committee meetings, I believe it was Michael Wise from our Department of Insurance said the average claim for alcohol-related accidents are $225,000, $235,000. So I said, well, take that times 2. So that gives every bar and restaurant who's serving, they get
Twice times.
2 per year, which is the average, right? And so I was like, $500,000 covers that. Let's just do that. And I was told a bunch of different reasons why we couldn't. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm thinking of this very simplistically, and I understand that.
Well, and I, you know, with me being one of the few people that kind of spoke up against this, having the conversation, whenever I spoke, I had many Republican legislators come to me. Like I said, on the final bill, myself and Ray Felder were the only 2 no's between Republicans or Democrats. It was probably being scored somewhere, some special interest, so we're going to tag you bad and we're going to make you look bad. I don't care.
Wait a minute. So every member
voted for this except for myself and Ray Felder. And you were out. I think you would have been red with us as well.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is, and there might have been some solutions, and granted, so Cal Forrest, one of our 2 listeners, as you often say, which everyone says, quit saying 2 listeners.
Right.
But Representative Cal Forrest come up to me, and he said, Guffey, I want to explain to you, because I was here as a freshman in 2017 whenever we passed this. And he said, looking back, he said it was one of those things where you're trying to understand an industry you're not as familiar with. We passed this, and then we seen the repercussions. Ultimately, what it come down to was the language of between an aggregate claim or an individual claim. So the difference is out of $1 million, you can be sued up to $1 million for the entire year between multiple claims, or $1 million per instance. And then they put in the responsibility, which we all often say, if you're responsible, you have to have more than 50% responsibility. That was argued on the floor by an attorney, and this is what makes me think it's so disingenuous. Argued that if you're 50% liable, then you can be sued for the 100% of the policy. However, what we found was that language says if it's got alcohol, if you're 1% responsible, then you are 100% liable.
Yeah.
And that becomes the problem. So if we could just simply change that language to state, to go with everything else we do tort reform. Now, I do have faith that we have something coming through the Senate that addresses the tort reform a little bit.
No, I don't.
I'm hoping it does.
I will bet you money that never makes it out of committee.
Well, I will bet you money there are so many small businesses and restaurants and legislators that are drunkards that like to go to these bars and restaurants late at night that they will stand up and fight for. I know the last one. I was using that as the example. But if we can't hold a campaign fundraiser because no one can sell alcohol after this time because we're in session till 5 o'clock or whatever it is, this will change.
Just remember those who make this life so easy.